I want to start by wishing you all Happy New Year's and thank you for sticking with me and my channel for all this time. I really appreciate it. Now, some of you gentlemen asked me to talk about the Yellow Vest protest, and at least in my country, there's almost no news coming about it. And if I were to just read the press, especially the international one, if you don't actively look for it, it seems as if the protests have almost died down. And that can't be further from the truth. Now, I want to point out that it's very difficult to actually gather information to what's going on, simply because there's a lot of manipulation from the press. And I don't think that all manipulation is political. I think some of the manipulation is just for the pure sensationalism of it, simply because the mainstream media has a financial interest. They're run by corporations which want to make money. So they put up clickbait articles and they put up thumbnails that bam the drum of sensationalism so that they get more and more people to click on it and they get an increase in revenue. So things like this are quite common, unfortunately. And if you listen to what people in France said in the beginning when the march was starting, you would see journalists that would put on helmets so that when they take pictures it looks like they're in a war zone. And I don't think that in the beginning of the protest there was the need to wear such protective gear because people weren't as violent in the beginning. And it was sensationalism. It was to make people from outside of Paris think that it's a war zone going on. And it was also to portray the marches as very dangerous, to portray the protests as being very violent, so that when the French government finally intervenes and they get the police in order to suppress the protesters, it will look like, well, it's justified because they're suppressing violence. Now again, like, I want to differentiate from what happened in the beginning, because now there's a whole new reality on the ground, as we're going to see soon. But since I stopped reporting, well, apparently there were the blue vest protests where the police actually got tired from beating the protesters. I guess their hands were aching. They were definitely strained from applying the batons over and over, so they demanded an increase in pay and an increase in staff, saying that they're overworked. And I'm pretty sure there are. Like, if you look at how many protesters are there, beating all of them takes a lot of effort. So I don't know what happened with that protest. Like, I couldn't find out to see if the police managed to get their demands or if the government managed to postpone. I've absolutely no idea. The press didn't report on it, or if they did, maybe it's in the French press and I can't read Francois. Now, with that mentioned, it seems that the French government all of a sudden realized that global warming isn't as big of a deal. And they stepped back on their desires to apply the tax, the gas tax, the fuel tax, which actually got all of this rolling. But it seems that the protesters aren't happy with that concession, and I don't think they will stop until they see a snap election or the government stepping down, like Macron especially. And I don't see that happening either, so it's still at a standstill. And considering that they've been protesting for so long, especially under this weather, it's obvious that these people have a legitimate grievance with the government, and they also have like 2/3 of the support of the nation. So it's not like it's a couple of agitators or anything like that. No, it comes a time where you can't just blame the person on the street being dissatisfied, and you have to blame the government. It comes a time where you have to look at the people that are the ruling class and say, okay, you're incompetent of actually ruling. Like, it is understandable if you get like a couple of people on the streets that they try to resist, but when you get like almost the entire nation supporting the movement, and you get so many people on the streets for so long, then obviously you have to come to grips with reality and say, all right, something needs to be done, and maybe snap elections would be in order. But too much arrogance. This is what I think. It's like too much arrogance at the leadership in France, and a lot of disconnect between the people who are leading and the people who are protesting. Now, with that said, this is what happened until now. So what exactly has happened this week? Well, apparently, as I understand from people that are in France, the press in France were trying to push the idea that it's Russian fake news, that Russia is pushing fake news in order to agitate people. Like, If it wasn't for Russia, people would be happy with the increase in gas tax. If it wasn't for Russia, people would be happy with Macron, I guess. And while it's painfully obvious that Russia today is spreading fake news, I mean, we live in the age where lying is just profitable. I'm sorry to say this, but it's true. Like, people are more willing to click on some sensational bullshit rather than click on something that's true. So a lot of the mainstream media is lying, and yeah, Russia today is lying, but so is everyone else. The people do have the ability to read information and filter it in their brain, so it's very insulting if you're a person that actually is protesting because it's upset about the way the country is ran, and you're upset about the increase in tax, and you're being told that the reason you're on the street is because of Russia Today. Like, if it wasn't Russia Today, you would have been sat comfortably in your home and just paid the extra tax, right? So this, in my opinion, enraged people. And take into account, this is just my opinion. Like, there can be other reasons. Maybe it was on their to-do list, but they haven't gotten around to do it up till now. Like, there might be other reasons than the ones I'm speculating. But I'm fairly certain is this treatment that the mainstream media had towards the protest, which angered people, and it led up apparently to a newspaper company being burned down to the ground, and a lot of protesters also gathered in front of a television station and started barring people from going in and out, like boycotting them right in front of their station. They did the same to a couple of radio stations as well. So it does seem like people are legitimately upset with the way the mainstream media handled this situation. And as for the overall state of things, it seems that the protesters have engaged with the police again. Like, there were protesters being pepper sprayed and attacked by the gendarmerie. And also, we see this picture that comes up in the news constantly with fires next to the Eiffel Tower, and there's smoke coming out. So all in all, I from my personal opinion, like, looking at these news and what's coming out, it seems that this might be the most violent week of protests that we have seen up till now. All that happened up till now is nothing compared to what's happening this week. And I don't know if it's going to get any better or if it's going to get any worse, but it does seem that there's over 80,000 police officers being deployed in order to handle this situation. Because at the end of the day, like, this is what I'm going by, right? It's not the pictures that, can be faked. Not necessarily fake, but misleading. Like, you take it from an interesting angle and all of a sudden it looks really bad. No, I'm looking at how the French government is handling this situation, right? Like, how many people they're deploying in order to deal with the protesters. And the fact that they're deploying such a high number of policemen clearly shows that the government is definitely taking this seriously. And we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes from here. But I definitely wanted to let you know that no, the yellow vest protests are definitely not over. They're still in full swing, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. If anything, it's getting worse because the protesters apparently assaulted the house of President Macron. Now, obviously, they didn't manage to get through, but just imagine what would happen if they would actually manage to apprehend, President Macron at his own house. Like, we're talking about a mob of angry people. Like, I don't think it would have ended in any pleasant way, but right. So it's kind of difficult for the media to cover up this thing, and it seems that they're just stop reporting on it. Like, seriously. I'm from Romania and I don't hear anything about this, and this is something very serious that might actually turn the tide for the future in Europe, because some of the protesters, for example, are seen taking down and burning down the European Union flag. So there might, start to burn an anti-EU sentiment within these protests. I don't know how big it is because it's a grassroots movement. Like, maybe there's just a couple of people that are anti-EU, or maybe there's a lot. There's no way of telling. But, like, none of this is being reported. You have to really dig into and try to find. The only people that are reporting it are usually publications that aren't reliable, like Russia Today or stuff like that. So I'm very careful when talking about what they're presenting. Like usually I do look at the pictures, I do look at the video evidence, and I don't read their editorials. Like I try to make up my own mind on it, because any other radio station is just any other TV station is just radio silent on this. And what's particularly interesting about this is that Macron has managed to do the impossible. Like, you know, when you have like Trump, he will not divide this type of thing. Like, it's a president that's so hated that it divides the nation. Well, it seems that when you actually have a president that is so hated, it unifies the nation. Because what Macron managed to do, surprisingly, is unify the far left and the far right. Like, if you look at these yellow vest protests, you're going to see people that have the hammer and sickle, like far left communists that are marching and they're taking part of the protest. And on the other hand, you got people that are walking in front of the cameras, and when there's a news reporter and they're trying to relay what's going down on the street, and they're going in front of the cameras and they're saying that Macron is being controlled by the Jews and he needs to step down. So they definitely managed to unite the far left, the far right, and the centrists. Like literally everyone is united in their hatred for Macron. Like this is astonishing. You know, like I never thought I would see this happening, but here you go. So, you know, take that as you may, but I definitely hope that there's going to be some reconciliation in the future, and that the government is at least going to try to negotiate a solution out of this, because it's ridiculous. Like all they had to do when the people started protesting initially was to listen to what they have to say, and not put taxes on people that were definitely not okay with. But at least, you know what, like the good thing about this is that I guess it's going to stop global warming, because since the streets are blocked and a lot of important streets are inaccessible, I guess people don't have cars anymore, and they can't they can't run, and thus they can't pollute, eh? So I guess mission accomplished. I mean, look how many cars they burned, right? This is another car that's not going to pollute ever again. Horrible, by the way. Like I genuinely do not understand why people are burning the cars. I do not like. Imagine living in Paris. You probably support the yellow vests. Like you're probably okay with it. And when you go out, you see that where you park your car is now a smoking cinder. Why do they burn down people's cars and private property? Like, ugh. I definitely can't agree with that. Anyway, Happy New Year's again, and let me know what you think. I'm definitely looking forward from reading the comments in this video, especially if you're from France. Like, if you're from that place, tell me how the situation is, and tell me if you think the mainstream media and people like me are doing a good job at reporting on it. Again, like I'm doing my best. Hopefully I managed to do an accurate representation of what's going on, and looking forward for your criticism.